Hi, everyone, and a huge thank you for joining us today for a discussion on forging the path to faster shipping in enterprise orgs. This is a lead dev webinar created in partnership with Slack. The webinar will last roughly 45 minutes, after which both myself and the panelists will head over to the lead dev Slack to answer some of your questions in the technical strategy channel. We may also have time to answer a couple of questions live, so please do submit those to the Q&A feature on Zoom, and we'll get them to them if we can towards the end. So let's get started with some introductions. My name is Blanca, and today I'll be joined by Noor, Nayana, Saeed, and Rukmini to share their experiences and insights. I'll ask each of you to introduce yourselves, and could you please also briefly tell us why this topic is important for you? We'll start with Noor.
Hello, everyone. My name is Noor. I work for UCAS. For those who do not know UCAS, UCAS is University College and Admission Services. So we are basically the gateway for a lot of the students making one of the biggest decisions in their lives for the first time. And in UCAS, I have two jobs. So I have my day job as the head of platform engineering, and I have my gay job as the senior leadership team sponsor for the EDI initiative, Quality, Diversity and Inclusion initiatives. What really drives change for us and why this is really important for us is, like I mentioned, this is the first step for many students coming into higher education, making a really big change in their lives. So we want to be able to cope with the ambitions of this amazing generation that is coming into education, higher education, into the workplace. So this is the first ambition, and this is why I personally believe that this topic is very close to my heart. In previous lives, I've seen things going really well, but I also seen things equally not going so well. And when it went well, it's just brilliant. So I'll just pause here and back to you, Blanca.
Thanks, Noor. Next up is Nayana.
Hello, my name is Nayana Shetty, and I work as a principal engineer at the Financial Times. And for those of you who don't know what Financial Times does, we are one of the global news media organizations. And I've been working in a spectrum of teams, from like the infrastructure teams in FT to now overseeing the mobile apps team. So I've seen quite a lot of different tech stacks and how they all look very similar on the surface. And over the last 5 or 6 years, FT has gone through a huge shift in how we ship our products. From we were releasing probably like 10, we did 10 releases in 3 months, to now we do close to 100 releases a day. And I felt like it would be a good thing to share some of the experiences of how our journey has been, and also to hear from these other lovely people we've got on the panel today. So yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Looking forward to that. Now we'll move on to Saeed.
Hi, yeah, I'm Saeed Ketchman. I'm a director of engineering at the New York Times. The group I'm responsible for is our growth platforms. And so we support a lot of the subscription growth initiatives. This topic's really important to me because over the past few years at the Times, we've been focusing on shipping faster. But it's not just about shipping faster, it's maintaining engineering quality and engineering excellence at the same time. Because we can all move really fast, but moving faster responsibly, at the end of the day, you're gonna have to pay that back. You create debt that you have to pay back. You can imagine the Times has been, for the past few years in really hyper growth. And so shipping fast is important to keep up with the news cycle, a crazy news cycle. It's been, we've all lived in this news cycle, but also subscription growth. There's a lot of ambitious goals for subscription growth. So, we've had to figure out like, how can we get experiments out there quickly? How can we get work out there quickly? New experiences for users out, but still at the same time, continue to make sure that we are making our technology better and not getting worse.
Sounds like quite a challenge. Last but not least, Rukmini.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rukmini Reddy. My pronouns are she, her. I'm VP of Engineering Platform at Slack. I lead teams that provide first-party developers experience and third-party developer experience, as well as Slack's no-code workflow builder tool. Why is this important for me? I think first, customer love is at the center of everything we do at Slack, and what better than putting our product in the hands of our customer, right? Like, that's what motivates us to come to work every day. That's why this topic is dear. And another side, speaking from my past experience as an engineer and a developer, nothing is better than shipping. And I used to joke early on that in my career that the rate at which I ship is directly proportional to the rate of happiness and just joy I feel as an engineer. So I think some personal motivation, as well as why we are motivated by putting innovation at the forefront of everything we do at Slack, and also really excited to share this group with this amazing panel. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, everyone. So let's kick things off. Today, we're going to be exploring the capabilities that technology teams need to have in order to deliver change. And we're going to hear examples from our tech leaders at UCAS, Financial Times, Slack, and the New York Times on when we can optimize and how to measure efficiency. So I'm going to start just setting the baseline in the room. And Noor, can you please tell us what are the drivers of change at your organization?
Oh, that's quite a big question. That's quite vast. But before I tell you about what is driving change at UCAS, let me give you a bit of a little story. So 2 weeks in, after the first lockdown, and everyone's in lockdown, no one is allowed to go anywhere. And there was one of the biggest utilities companies in the UK. You would be able to phone them and book an engineer to come over to look at your boiler. That was an eye-opener for a lot of organizations. And we always have this running joke: what is the biggest driver for digital transformation in your company? Everyone will say COVID. So everyone just realized, not within a tech-based organization, but all organizations realized that, hang on a minute, we cannot have technology catching up with the business and business leading the way forward. We need to have that sense where technology is working in lockstep with the business. Otherwise, we will just fall apart. The way that you get to motivate your engineering teams and to work together hand in hand is you need to have that clear narrative. Why are you in the business? You need to start with your why. Why are you in business? Why are you doing what you're doing? What is the objectives that you're trying to achieve? And based on that, you start, I come from an architectural background, so I'll talk about architecture because it's really close to my heart. You start building your capability map, your capability matrix, and you start to make sure that whatever that you do logically, or you need to do, maps to an objective that the organization really meets. And then you start breaking down into lower areas and break down more into, okay, how we're going to do this technology, how we're going to do that. And in all times, the most important thing is to have a direct line of sight from the lowest of the components that you have to your strategic objective. The main reason is you need to be able to answer at any point in time, why are you doing this? So what if we haven't done this? And that clarity, that line of sight, is what is driving change at UCAS. UCAS at the moment has quite a few clear objectives. They're really high level. If you think about it, it's really high level. So I'm literally looking at the screen right now. It's inspire and empower individuals to make decisions and aspirational choices, data-driven organization, deliver trusted and flexible services, be an employer of choice, connect the world to UK higher education, and efficiency and value. If you think of each of those, they can be broken down from a technology perspective into so many things. When we talk about trusted and flexible services, we're talking about security. We're talking about able to roll out new features in a safe manner. And like Saeed mentioned, you'll have to pay the price if you move too fast. So you need to be able to pick that up. So these high-level objectives, these big six-ticket items will distill at the end to what we all need to do. Hopefully I didn't waffle a little bit too much around your question, Blanca.
Not at all. No, I actually I had a follow-up just now. Has that changed in the way that you kind of set out the strategy and then teams feed into it, or has that kind of been going on for some time? Because I understand other organizations have been quite shifting the way they do strategy to kind of match that.
So UCAS previously has been heavily reliant on top-down. So the exec will say, this is our objective, this is how we're going to do it. However, there has been a lot of I wouldn't call it grassroots, but all the senior management are now feeding back into the exec. Actually, we should be heading this way. Actually, it should be done this way. This priorities needs to be shifted such and such. And obviously those heads of, myself included, are bringing this from the teams. So we need to be able to bring this and create that connection, create that line of sight at the end of the day. And of course, the exec will always have a say on what goes first, but they need to also understand that when doing these choices, these are the constraints or these are the benefits of what we're suggesting, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Does that make sense?
I can. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I asked that because at the BBC, where I work, we've also been going through kind of that strategic transformation, and yeah, it's quite empowering for teams.
It is,
To
absolutely.
be honest. So let's move on to the next question. This one is for Saeed. What metrics do you use to track the change rate?
It's a good question, because if we're talking about enterprise orgs, you know, I try to think about this from that perspective. There's the obvious answer is, oh, we use like tracking tools like Jira, or other ticket tracking tools. We track things like velocity, cycle time, how often tickets are blocked. But if I give that answer, everyone would just kind of nod and say, yeah, we already do that. So what's the point of what you're saying? And so I thought about like, what are less obvious things that are very difficult to track, and that we've been trying to do at the times a little bit more. And I don't have the answer of like how you track these, but these are things we're trying to figure out how to track. And at least maybe quantitatively they're hard, but qualitatively they're a little bit more easy. And so some of them are thinking about like things like sentiment, ease of doing work. And eventually these should be translating into speed of delivery. But that does require you having really good tracking systems like Jira or something else that you're using. And not every org has that standardized. So what we've been experimenting specifically at the times is we're thinking about how answering this question, or trying to measure this question, how often are our platforms or is our technology the inhibitor of innovation? So the amount of times business wants to do something and they say, well, we can't do that, the tech is blocking it. And trying to track that and use that as some type of metric. Another one is how often is the tech or the platforms the driver of innovation at the organization? So kind of what Noor's talking about, but it's like that the technology is pushing for the innovation. And so you may have like your platform teams or your tech teams saying, hey, we should be doing this because we have these capabilities. And how often is that happening, and trying to track that. Another one I think is really important is, do people enjoy working with the teams that they depend on, and do they come readily to collaborate with them? And we had one team, I got the feedback a few weeks ago saying, you know, some of the partner teams they enjoy working with this platform team, and they say they actually readily go to them and collaborate with them because it's such a pleasant experience. And we got some feedback. It was really nice to hear. And so being able to track that, like that makes things faster. Early collaboration makes things faster. So if you can see that happiness and how often that happens. Another one on the flip side a little bit is platform quality and engineering excellence suffering or improving, and trying to measure that. Are we getting better? Are we getting worse? And if feature work, is feature work going faster? Is it easier to get done with less side effects and tech debt? And so these are some of the things we're trying to figure out how to measure them. They're hard to measure. Sometimes you send like a survey out and ask people, but that's not always the best way to do it. But I think in an enterprise organization, you may have to look at some of these elements and see, is change happening in the right direction?
No, I totally agree. I was I was almost nodding. I saw everyone else also nodding at the same time. I was wondering, does anyone else want to chip in here with any other metrics that they're talking about in their orgs, and they can add to Said's?
I think one of the frameworks we've used around metrics is like the EAST framework, which is make things easy, attractive, simple, and have it in a timely manner. So then other teams can actually get on board and adopt it, and it's not too hard to actually capture metrics. So that is something which we've often used at the FD.
Nice, that sounds great.
Also underscore what Said said, like how often is technology inhibiting the business, right? I think constantly innovating your technology stack, like we have better engineering projects, which we invest in every quarter ruthlessly to make sure that our developers are being their most productive self so that they can keep up the pace of innovation. So just +1 to everything said and then just said.
Yeah, I thought for me, because I work in a platform team at the BBC, the most interesting one that you mentioned that rang through was the willing of people to collaborate with each other. I was like, definitely our kind of stakeholders and downstream clients are, the best source for us of success, really, because otherwise we don't do any kind of user audience facing work. So let's move on. I think the next question is for Rukmini. So what are the cultural changes that support a high innovation rate at Slack?
I think to what Said said, like how much people like to interact with you, one thing, another side to it is how do you view success together, right? Because most often you have to collaborate across the org and across different disciplines to be able to ship faster, even in enterprise org. So it's about, do you have a shared view of reality? First and foremost, do we all have a sense of understanding of what resources we have available and how best to deploy it? And then painting a picture of shared success cannot be underscored enough, because that's how you drive alignment. That's how you are able to help people feel empowered so they can make day-to-day prioritization decisions, right? So OKRs is something that that really work for us at Slack. Like we set 3-year roadmaps, but 3-year strategies, but we do have OKRs annually, we have quarterly reviews, we try to align everyone around a shared view of success. So that's one like cultural aspect, but that we use data, but we also are culturally able to align the big rocks across the organization. Another thing that, I think we have at Slack that really helps empower teams and decision-making and help people feel autonomous, because that's when your rate of innovations increases. And product principles, we have product principles at Slack that are like, for example, be a good host. So that should be front and center of how you build Slack at Slack. So I think giving people some guidelines on what your product principles are, what your core values are as an engineering organization, and what does success look like at the business, like these are necessary to be able to drive cultural change so you can align everybody around it.
Would you mind giving us 1 or 2 examples of what are those product principles? So that
yes, one of them is prototype the path to production, which is things are not going to be perfect, they're not, but you have to keep prototyping and get to like one hill and then the next hill later. Like don't try to climb the entire mountain. Don't make me think, we already talked about. The other one is, I think, be a great host.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. That sounds really, really, really good, especially because it's the point of product is kind of so focused on delivery. Whereas when you mentioned it, I almost thought about team charters, which is something that a lot of teams use, but it's not necessarily conclusive to kind of making work and getting it out there. Great. So moving again to Said. So what are the technical needs that you require to maintain that pace that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, so there are a lot of technical needs. I'm just going to talk about 2 of them, but I'm sure the rest of the panel probably has more examples as well. So 2, like the New York Times, like 2 of them have been a pretty big focus for a while now, but even more so right now. One of them is, and they're not things that you guys haven't already thought about, but one of them is automation where it matters. Automation is really key. If you want to ship fast, especially at enterprise organizations, like a lot of times maybe you don't have a lot of automation, or you think you have a lot of automation, but maybe it's not the right type of automation. And so obviously, your test suite should be automated, but also deployment process and infrastructure scaling. That should be as automated as possible. You shouldn't have to respond to P1s and fires all the time. Now, this can be really tricky at enterprise org because you could be using older technology. And when you have older technology, if you're still in a data center, your own data center, for example, not in the cloud, scaling can be really hard because you need to buy more infrastructure. Or if you just don't have the tooling to be able to do test automation or CDCI, then it's really difficult. So you end up with two options. The first option is what we actually did at the times is you start to shape the organization and push for modernizing the tooling, and you start in the areas that have the biggest impact. And so, because you can't fix everything. So you see, like, where is the pressure? Like, where's the bottleneck? Is it really around deployment? Is it scaling? And everyone's always responding to P1s and problems. And you put a lot of folks into there and try not to do everything at once. In terms of automation, maybe it's just your test suite needs to be focused on. And this can be on an individual team level or organization level. The other option, if you can't actually change your tooling, is to really take a look at your legacy tooling and start to simplify it. So for example, if you're in a legacy deployment system, like maybe you can't get rid of it, but there's probably, I bet there's a lot of custom scripts. People wrote a bunch of bash scripts that do a lot of stuff for your deployment process. Start looking at that and cleaning it up. There should be owners. Every piece of code should have an owner. And so you just start to go through that. And if people are scared, like, oh, if we don't know what this does, and if we remove it, it could break the deployment process. Well, maybe it's time for you to break the deployment process and figure out how to improve it. So I think you can still, without having to use new tooling, you can go back and clean up some of the old tooling. It's hard work and you need commitment from the org and the team. But I think at a legacy org, that's what you might have to do, or enterprise org. The other one quickly is observability. So automation is key, but observability. You can't move fast, responsibly, if you don't know what's going on in your application. And I think this is one at the very top of the list, maybe. So defining things like metrics, shoring up your logging, setting up a proper alerting, and a few tips on this at an enterprise org, because you may have some of this, but it may be convoluted or noisy. So for example, alerting, reduce them. You should only have alerts on things that you'll actually take action on. If it's just for information, remove it. There's no reason. You can find other ways to let people know what's going on. And if you're alerting your team, it should be something that they will actually take action, or else they'll just start to ignore it. And then it's pointless. You might as well have a log. Determining the measure metrics that really matter. You may think like latency matters. Maybe it doesn't for your application. So that's not the metric that you really care about. Maybe it's error rate. Maybe it's cache hit miss. And so it's figuring out like, what is your user base? How's your application being used within the organization? And then setting the metrics per application that makes sense for the application. And then I think the last one would be creating SLOs. I'm surprised that in a lot of enterprise orgs, they don't have SLOs for their applications. And if you don't have that, then you don't know that you don't have a benchmark for what good performance looks like. So is it 95% uptime good? Is 200 milliseconds good latency? So you set those SLOs based off the metrics that matter, and then that way you know exactly if your application is performing well or not. I think all of these things lead to like faster QA cycles, less oversight on contributions, more people can contribute to the code base, faster deployment processes, less need to respond to P1s, and that's just a net gain for shipping fast code and fast projects.
Wow, yeah, that was a lot. You did mention a number of things that ring true to home for me. So legacy, yeah, I work in an organization with lots of legacy, and it's very, very hard to get buy-in sometimes, even from engineers, to actually work on things. So there's a lot of kind of selling the why. Why do we need to work on this for both the product and then the engineering teams? And then the other part you mentioned about the right automation, because you can always try to be never ending. It's like a never-ending thing, the automation. And I was also interested because in the BBC, we're very event-driven for obvious reasons. And how do you cater that scaling? So Noor, do you want to chip in? I saw you raising your hand.
Yeah, I was just before we chip into the your question around scaling and transactionality. There's one more thing that I believe is also quite important as a technology enabler for teams: self-service. What made Amazon and Google today, the Amazon and Google of the world today, is self-service. They empowered their development teams to do their own stuff within specific or confined parameters, right? So how Amazon AWS came to be, they needed to offer the business some capabilities to scale up or do stuff on their own and offer it to their I don't know, business developer to do something. And Google, how they came to be Google, they offered spare capacity, and that capacity you can tap into and build your own stuff. So self-service is one of the most crucial things that we can empower our teams to innovate and to make things happen. And this is one of the things that, for example, the cloud platform team at UCAS is building these little blocks so that the other development teams, oh, actually, I don't have to think about it. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I'll just take this as is, and I'll just use it and build on top. So this is a mixture of technology enabler versus process. As you grow into becoming a mature organization, the line blurs and the process and the technology become practically one and the same.
Nayana, you want to add on? You're mute.
It's been a year and we still do it. What Noor said did remind me of something we've been talking in the FT, which is identifying non-differentiating work from what actually differentiates your business from the rest outside, and being able to pick those tasks and try and generalize it in a way that, or offload it to third parties where possible for the non-differentiating work. So your teams can actually focus a lot more on the things that really matter for your business. So I think that does help a lot as well in actually moving us in the right direction.
That is so true. And now that you're with me, I have the next question for you, Nayana. Well, we've been working in hybrid. It's kind of never, the question. How are you managing to keep up this pace? Has anything, kind of changed?
I think before we get into hybrid, I want to go back a bit and think about what kind of things do we need to have in organizations to actually, in general, have a good, healthy organization. And we kind of touched upon all of this already, so I'm probably going to reiterate some things that Noor and Said and Rukmini mentioned, which is a culture that everyone feels safe to take calculated risks, make mistakes, but then innovate. The second thing is automation. I think we covered quite a bit on how important it is to automate and get the right observability metrics in place. The third thing is having a lean process that will enable engineers to experiment and try new things, and also show progress that is not just internal, but actually things that will impact the users. And the fourth one is measurements, as Said did mention a couple of things that we could be measuring, making sure even if we can't measure it, being aware of the metrics that you really care about, and thinking about it consciously, having it in the front of your minds would take you to a very good position of where you know what you're spending your effort and time on. And the last thing is sharing, which is we want people to be sharing information, pair programming, mobbing, all of those things does help organizations to bring people along on the journey and stuff. So, and I feel like hybrid working has highlighted all of these things quite a lot, and organizations that have got these set up quite well probably felt less hard to start using these new ways of working and collaborating. For the FT, it's been a combination of encouraging people to book focus times, for example, nudging people to say Wednesdays is a no meeting Wednesdays, put your head down and get more work done, to things like we have developer huddles and show and tell sessions, which is a nice way to come together as a community and celebrate our successes, talk about the issues that we had. And I think most importantly, it is the blameless culture and being able to report on issues when they are in a way that doesn't actually point fingers at people. I feel these are things that have helped us quite a bit in the last year to at least feel sane and motivated within the FT.
Right. And what of those things or other things you've not mentioned are kind of helping orgs like the Financial Times keep the morale? Because sometimes I find it's a bit hard to kind of feel part of something bigger than the room that you're working in.
I think the current scenarios have explicitly called out how our organization structures are and what our communication boundaries are. And it's more important now for organizations to be thinking about what kind of silos do we have in our organizations and how do we break silos to get, as some of them were mentioning earlier, how do you get that early communication going on across teams, which is what I think we do quite a bit using OKR sessions and the wider product and tech level show and tell sessions where we call out these initiatives that are going on that people should be aware of and can come and talk to. And also one thing that I really like that we do is Coffee Relate, which is Slack automatically hooks up to a random person and you just go and have a chat with them, which is, it helps people's morale quite a lot. And we learn about different parts of our organization as part of this as well, which is very nice. There's also things like mentoring and the line managers support networks, which does help people to share things across different parts of the organization and learn from each other. I think those things have helped us quite a bit as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And anyone else wants to share more ideas for how they kind of keep the teams together and the organization together? Go on, Nor.
So I'm going to give you something that that we have done literally 2 weeks ago. So we ran a team event over 2 days. So a morning and a day break and a break for a day to do our normal work, and then another morning. The first morning we were talking about psychological safety, what makes a highly functional team, and we came out of it with some suggestions, some things that we will pledge, we will make sure that we will make these happen. And as we took these and digested them overnight, and the next day we went to the second session, which was, guess what? Color insights. So everyone was being made aware of their entire team and how and where they fall on that wheel of colors, if you want to call it that way. And having these profiles available in each and everyone's hand, you can see light bulbs moment popping in people's minds. So this is how you communicate that way. And people kind of gelled together nicely. So yeah, that's and I'm really looking forward to the next PI planning session, because we will change dramatically how we work, and I'm really looking forward to it.
I just have one more thing to add. I think the last year, if anything, all is one thing that bound us all together around the globe, like everybody here is located in different places, is just how much we struggled, right? It was crisis over crisis over crisis. And one thing that I have really been very intentional about, and my teams have in the last year, is celebrations. Celebrate small things, celebrate small wins. Like now more than ever, we need to like celebrate each other. So our team, for example, has this awesome sauce thread that we have in Slack every Thursday, and we just give kudos to each other, not just on the wins of the week, but the learnings of the week. So that's where like the blameless culture, like encouraging people to lean in, comes in. Like you could have had an incident, but maybe what you celebrate is what we learned from that incident and how we can get better. So cannot understate that importance of that. And it's like, we're not going back to the way we worked. None of us are, right? And for us, Slack has so many asynchronous features that we have been dog fooding for months, and we're really excited for all of you to see. But one example is the stories feature, where now you don't have to spend your time that you want to interact and with like a stand-up meeting is irrelevant. Like you can post a story with your update, drop it in channel, and save that time that you want to share lively, maybe live, like Nayana said, meeting with someone on Donut and having coffee with them and building that relationship, right? So I think it's like muscles we didn't know we had. We are all just constantly learning. And like our product principle, we all have to prototype the path, to figure out how this new world's going to be for us.
Fantastic. I love that, muscles we didn't know we had, because it's so true. So true. So now we're going to go back to Noor, because you mentioned the autonomous teams at Amazon, and I had a question for you here. How do you define autonomy for teams?
Right. So before we talk about autonomy, we need to understand that autonomy without boundaries will only lead to chaos. So if we're going to enable our teams, if we're going to empower our teams, we need to make sure that there are some guardrails, there are some areas that within those areas, do whatever you want. Even if you want to break something, you know what, go and break it. That's perfectly fine. So when we talk about guardrails, when we talk about autonomy and self-service, we're talking about two things. We're talking about a process, and we're also talking about code and how these guardrails can be codified. They can be codified as a matter of automated testing. They can be codified as part of the self-serve. Wouldn't let you have, I don't know, asterisk kind of action on AWS, for example, right? Or it could be something such as an accelerator that will tell you, if you want to use RDS or if you want to use AKS, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This will accelerate you. Or if you want to do logging, this is the best way to do it. So it's a combination of multiple things, and within those areas, either codified hard guardrails or soft guidelines and kind of an advice that you give with an open hand. This for me is autonomy, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. I find that related to that also, having guardrails, people think it inhibits creativity, but it actually doesn't. When you set limits, people get more creative with how they solve problems. So it's really, really effective.
And it kind of helps you to focus on really what you do best. So if you're a data team, you don't want to think about cloud platform and how it's going to perform. You don't want to think about how you're going to scale that. You don't want to think about how storage is going to look like. You don't want to think about that stuff. You want to innovate in data. And if you're a developer on a new feature, you don't want to think about how the API is going to be secured. You just want to build the bloody API and get it done with. But leave the security for other people to secure it, and so on and so forth.
Agreed. Saeed, I see you want to chip in there.
Yeah, just really quick, because this one resonates what Noor was saying. I think one thing, like taking it from a perspective of if you're an engineering leader, like if you're in charge of a group, and building off of that is like, if you want to give autonomy, like if you have direct reports, if you have groups under you, how much can they do without getting permission from you and just informing you? And that really is autonomy within the scope, so every team is scoped. They have a certain charter, they have a scope, that's what they can do. And so in an enterprise organization, like a lot of times people like to micromanage. They want to know what's going on, but not just know what's going on, have a decision, be able to like veto it, but that's not autonomy. Autonomy is letting them do it. And so as engineering leaders, we have a responsibility to say, wait a second, no, I shouldn't be the one saying yes or no. The autonomy should be there where they can say yes or no and inform me. And if it breaks, if it works, like that's a learning for that team. And and so I think we have to move towards that more and more. It's hard to do though, letting go.
Yeah. Noor?
Yeah, I was actually, you made a penny drop in my mind. Thank you, Saeed. For example, for platform engineering, we have 3 core principles, and these are the only guardrails that you will have in platform engineering at UCAS. And this is everything as code. If it's not going to be done as code, we don't want to do it. It's a no starter for a conversation. If it's not cloud native, we don't want to do it. I'm not going to have another, I don't know, appliance sitting around to do something and the architecture is not cloud native. We don't want to do that, right? And we're going to use the best tool for the job. So we're not going to try to shoehorn something into doing something that's not really meant to be. Within these 3 parameters, anyone in platform engineering is free to innovate and to do and deliver and do whatever they really want within these parameters. But that's it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, it sounds really, for me, very empowering. But I know for a lot of engineers I work with, it can sound very daunting because it's almost like acquiring that responsibility. But once you try it, you don't want to go back. And what you were explaining, Said, in my team, we call it false delegation. When you feel that you're owning something, but at the end of the day, you have to consult with, someone higher up to kind of get it done. So yeah, doesn't really work. Let's move on to the last couple of questions if we have time. I've seen some questions pop up in the QA, but I think because you're asking for examples and more detail, we're probably going to move those to the chat. Okay, so please bear with us. The last question we might have time for is for Rukmini. So do you have an example of how you bring along to your stakeholders? We've kind of neglected talking about stakeholders here, but they are the core. So how do you create an alignment between them and your tech teams?
Yeah, I alluded to this earlier. I think especially if your engineering team and the product and design are literally like your stakeholders, like they are partners, and you build this shared vision for your product with them. So one thing that's served me in my experience very well has just been, and this can apply to if your stakeholders, finance or operations, it doesn't matter, is first, do you both agree to the current state of affairs? Like, is a shared view of reality. Do you believe like we have huge technical debt, or you think that no, technical debt doesn't matter and I can just go on adding new shiny features to the product? Like having a shared view of reality is the first step, one of the 3 tenets of having a strong cross-functional partnership. The second one is actually flow of information. The information product partners possess is very different than the information engineering partners possess. For example, I would know if we have an area of the application where the observability has been a little sketchy and we need to invest in, I would know who's probably going to leave the company or attrit that's going to affect our resourcing. And my product partner might know what CEO's latest thinking on the business is or what a go-to-market partners are asking for. Similarly, our design counterpart might know what's the latest user experience survey tell us about how we built our interface, right? And the information needs to flow, and you need to like build those relationships where you can share this information. And this will indirectly allow you to get to the third tenet, which is a shared view of success. This helps you with those OKR setting. It helps you with project prioritization. And almost every one of us always needs more resources than we have, right? In any organization. So it comes down to one thing, which is ruthless prioritization for a team, a cross-functional team to be successful. And to be able to do that, these 3 tenets need to be in place, and you need to have a strong foundation of partnership where something that said earlier on, people would want to like to work with you, right? But if you do these 3 things well, it really helps build strong partnerships and relationships, which will make those tough times easier, right?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. And maybe I think I'm going to stop here. There was one last question for you, Nayana. Maybe we'll answer that in the chat. We have only 1 minute left. So I think, it's been incredible having all of you. Okay, I've taken lots of notes. This was for the takeaways. I think there's just so many things in here that you have said. It's about thinking what are the metrics that you mentioned, Said, at the start, Noor, about the autonomy of teams and what real autonomy means and what placeholders those teams have. Nayana, you've spoken at the Financial Times how you're kind of shipping so much faster, and there's relationships, everyone is aligned all over, so that makes everyone just kind of be together on the same track. And Rukmini, you've kind of echoed the same thing, and how it's not just engineering teams, it's everyone in the organization that has to kind of be together and buy into this vision. And this is actually ties with how Noor, you introduced yourself at the start, which was like, we're trying to just align everyone in the org. So yeah, amazing. Thank you all. Okay, and it's been really good insights on today's panel. We're going to head over now to the Lead Dev Slack, and there's a channel called Technical Dash Strategy in there. Please head there to continue the discussion. I'm going to take over the 3 questions that were posted in the Q&A, post them there, and our panelists will happily provide some detail to those. Okay, so thanks everyone.